This multifetal gestation means that there is presence of two or more embryonic or the fetal heartbeats which are seen on ultrasound. The incidence of multiple pregnancy is 33.7 per 1000 births. And multiple gestation in general are complicated by increased maternal and fetal morbidities. In the maternal morbidities, you should know that the chance of PET, diabetes and hemorrhage, it will increase. And this hemorrhage, both antepartum hemorrhage and postpartum hemorrhage. Fetal morbidities include the most common incidence will be that for the preterm twin transfusion syndrome, then growth discrepancies between the two children, between the two fetuses, which will necessitate birth before 37 weeks of pregnancy. 6 times increased risk of preterm delivery in twins, 5 times higher rate of stillbirth, and 7 times increased risk in the neonatal death. All of these complications, they occur mostly because of the prematurity. And pregnancy outcomes, they depend upon the number of the fetuses and then chorionicity and amnionicity of the pregnancy. So what is the pathogenesis of this multiple gestation? Zygosity and chorionicity. You should be very clear about the differences between the zygosity, which means genetic makeup of multiple gestations, and chorionicity, it means that what is the composition of the placenta, like one placenta, two or one. Zygosity, it cannot be determined antenatally unless the twins, they are of different sex, or zygosity testing is performed via invasive diagnostic testing, like you have done amniocentesis or CVS. So it is very important, zygosity, basically it will tell you that they are coming from one zygote or they are coming from two zygotes. Usually when they are of the same sex, it means they are coming from the same zygote. If they have different sexes, it means that they are coming from two different zygotes. Very important to determine chorionicity because it is going to tell you that what is the risk profile of this pregnancy. Monozygotic, the rate of monozygotic twinning is 1 in 250 pregnancies, and 30% of all twins are monozygotic. Monozygotic twins, they are the result of cleavage of a fertilized single ovum by a single sperm. So monozygotic pregnancy because there was just one egg and one sperm. And the process remains uninfluenced by race, age and parity. It is the same worldwide. Important SDA, that what is the rate of monozygotic twins is increasing, or it is more common in a certain ethnic group. Remember, it is the same whatever is the race of the person, whatever is the age and parity, but it is affected by infertility treatment interventions which are thought to occur due to injury to the zona pellucida that influences splitting. Timing, and this I will explain to you with the help of a diagram. Dichorionic and the diamniotic. Remember, chorion is the outermost layer and amnion is just inner to the chorion. So if the zygote divides within 72 hours of fertilization prior to the morula phase and trophoblast differentiation, then a dichorionic diamniotic twin pregnancy occurs, and with separate or fused placenta. There will be two chorions and two amnions. Di means two, so dichorionic, diamniotic. And this accounts for 1/3 of monozygotic twinnings. Dichorionic gestations, they have the lowest rate of overall complications. So because they are just like two different individuals, right? Dichorionic, diamniotic, two different fetuses, okay? So the risk will be less as compared to others. In monochorionic diamniotic pregnancy, it results from division on day 4 to 8. This one, remember, within 3 days, within 72 hours, so we are getting two separate individuals. Here in the monochorionic diamniotic, this is dividing between day 4 to 8 after differentiation of the trophoblast has occurred, but prior to the formation of the amnion. So here a single placenta is found with a common chorion and two amnions. This accounts for two-thirds, like 2 in 3 of monozygotic twinning. Monochorionic pregnancies, they have an increased risk of adverse outcomes including fetal structural malformations, intrauterine growth retardation, and spontaneous premature birth. They are also associated with an increased risk of twin-twin transfusion syndrome. Another type of twinning can be monochorionic monoamniotic. These are the rarest, very less in incidence as compared to the others. The incidence is 1 in 10,000. And this will occur when the division occurs after differentiation of the amnion on day 8 to 13 after fertilization. There is going to be a single placenta, one chorion and one amnion. Congenital anomaly rates, they are as high as 25%, and the fetal weights, they are most often discordant. The weights are going to be different. Perinatal mortality is as high as 80%, and primarily it is because of the cord entanglement and the absence of dividing membrane between the fetuses. So another form of twins is conjoined twins. So it may occur due to incomplete splitting of an embryo or late splitting on day 13 or beyond. Incidence is 1 in 50,000 to 1 in 100,000 births. Conjoined twins, they are described by site of union, like they are joined in the chest, thoracopagus. They are joined in the abdomen, we call them omphallopagus. And then if the heads, they are attached to each other, then we call them craniopagus. If they are joined at the level of sacrum, we call them pyopagus. Okay, these are different varieties which you are not required to remember. Just remember the incidence of conjoined twin is 1 in 50,000 to 1 in 100,000. Very rare. Dizygotic twins. So that was all about monozygotic twins. Now dizygotic twins. The rates, they are like they are varying in the US because your reference is this ACOG guideline. That is 1 in 80 births. Okay, and traditional formula, it tells you like the incidence is going to be like very high, and the dizygotic twins, they occur when two separate ova, they are fertilized by two separate sperms. Okay, so two ova and two sperms, then we are getting dizygotic twins. That is the point. Okay, so dichorionic diamniotic, each pregnancy will have its own placenta, and every dizygote pair, it will be dichorionic and diamniotic, and then its incidence is influenced by age, race, heredity, then what is the history, then what is the parity and the fertility therapies, and for how long like intubation was done, and then it can be like it can refer to the like two eggs they are coming, and then they are giving rise to different types of twins like that, dizygotic twins. So like we can say here, like the incidence of the twin is 33.7 in 1000 births, like we have decided before. This diagram you must have seen at many places. These are like, this is the two cell stage, okay, when you have the zygote. So zygote is here. Now as the pregnancy will advance, the chances of twinning, they will be different, and we are going to get different type of twins like that. Okay, so let's go over it. So if the division occurs at this stage, like this is the 8 cell stage or morula, that is between 0 to 4 days. Okay, so what are we going to get? We are going to get like this is at 4, like this days. What has happened? The differentiation has occurred. So there is amnion, there is chorionic cavity, there is amnion, like it is going to give rise to two different individuals like that. Okay, because the amnion and chorion, they have not differentiated like that. Okay, so they will be, we will be getting like two individuals. Okay, that is one thing. which will be like dichorionic. So we are getting dichorionic diamniotic. So between in the first 72 hours or 0 to 4 days. Now if it is occurring between 4 to 8 days, then we are going to get what? Here, in the first 72 hours, we are getting two separate individuals like that, okay? Then if it occurs between 4 to 8 days, then we are going to get, like this is now the blastocyst stage, so we are going to get dichorionic diamniotic, like it is a division, and we are going to get two separate individuals like that, two separate embryonic blasts. So you are going to get monochorionic and diamniotic because it has divided into the two. So then if the division occurs between 6 to 12 days, then you are going to get what? Some features must have developed. It will be like the amnion and the amniotic cavity, they will form above the germinal disc, and we are going to get monochorionic, monoamniotic. And if the division will occur after day 13, you are going to get the conjoined twins, okay? So occurring within first 72 hours, you are going to get like two separate individuals, separate chorion, separate amnion. Occurs 4 to 8, common monochorionic and diamniotic. After that one, like between 8 to 4 days, you are going to get like this, monochorionic, monoamniotic. But if the division occurs after more than 13 days, then you are going to get conjoined twins. Okay, so any confusion, any problem about it?
No.
Because they like to ask you.
But the picture in the end,
Yeah,
yeah, Doctora, the picture in the end the same.
yeah, yeah,
This is the last three pictures. So now the
yes.
same. So
They are telling you the same thing, that when the division is occurring, here it is. Occurring in the 72 hours, everything is different, okay? Occurring within like on day 4 to 8, what is happening? You are getting two individuals, the chorion different, and the amnion will be, chorion will be the same, amnion will be different. After, so they are telling you like for where you are going to get like the separate placenta, because it occurred very early, and here you are going to get two placenta like that. See, two placental masses are there like that. Here 0 to 4 we are going to get monochorionic diamniotic. Then after day 13, after day 8 you are going to get monochorionic, monoamniotic, and after day 13 you are going to get conjoined twins. That is the point, okay? Any confusion, any problem?
no.
Okay, so the rates, they have increased because of the IVF pregnancies, and then ART, assisted reproductive technologies. So the dizygotic pregnancies, we said that race and ethnicity, they influenced twinning rates, and the multiple gestations, they occur most commonly among African Americans and the least frequent among the Asians. And then one theory relates to varying levels of the FSH. Maternal heredity of twinning, it is increased rates up to the 1 in 60 births. So maternal age is an independent risk factor in affected in the twinning, and it occurs naturally when we have not stimulated the cycle. Then the incidence is 16.3 and 1000 if the woman is less than 20, but it will increase like more than four times if the woman is like more than 40, then the chance is 71 in 1000. So 71 in 1000 if the age of the mother is more than 40 years. Peak age of the dizygotic twinning is 37 years. When the FSH levels, they will reach the maximum level, and then greater parity. Like if she has multiple pregnancies, then it is an other independent risk factor for having twins. Increased gonadotropin levels, then namely the FSH, they are related to the increase in the twinning. Why it is so? Because the FSH level, it will tell you that how many follicles they will be taken up, and they will enlarge, and then they will give rise to the twin pregnancy. So this occurs as a rebound effect of increased pituitary gonadotropin after discontinuation of long-term oral contraceptives in some people in the early cycles Once they have stopped the drugs, the COCPs, then the incidence of twinning also increases because the ovaries, they take some time to adjust. Okay, that is the problem. So the estrogen, like if you remember when we were reading this reproductive endocrinology, that tomifencitrate, it increases the risk of dizygotic gestation to 5 to 10%. All SBAs, okay, tomifencitrate, the risk of dizygotic twins, it is 5 to 10%. And assisted reproductive technology like IVF, it is responsible for massive increase in the gestation, multifetal gestation, and the rates now they have decreased with the introduction of the new protocols that we should not be transmitting like transferring more than 2 embryos. That is the point. Okay. If there is monozygotic twinning rates, they are not influenced by the factors such as race, age, and parity. This type of twinning, monozygotic, so it is affected by the ART, including IVF and ICSI, because this is due to disruption of the zona pellucida. This is what the guideline says. So what are the clinical signs and symptoms? Symptoms, we need to take a detailed history, and it may alert the clinician to the increased risk of the factors on the like because of the twinning, like when you're taking history before starting the treatment. Okay. Patient's degree of the common discomfort of pregnancy, such as a nausea, vomiting, pelvic pain, it may be exaggerated, and it doesn't differ between the dizygotic and the monozygotic gestations. Clinical examination typically reveals a uterine size greater than the expected for dates. However, it is difficult to diagnose twins clinically prior to the third trimester. A detection of multiple heart tones on external auscultation, it should alert the clinician that there is multifetal gestation. So, what should be done? You know that ultrasonography is vital. It is a vital tool in identification of the twins. Okay, so transvaginal approach in the start of the pregnancy, it will allow detection of twin pregnancy as early as 5 weeks, because you are going to see two different embryo sacs, yolk sacs, and maybe you can see two different embryos. Identification of chorionicity is essential to the patient counseling for the remainder of the pregnancy. Counting the number of the gestation sacs, yolk sacs, fetal folds, and measuring the thickness of a dividing membrane, these are the first step. Later in pregnancy, precise determination of the chorionicity, it becomes more difficult. Interrogation involves identification of the number of placenta. Like if they will ask you that how you will identify what stage is the pregnancy, or is it a twin pregnancy, or what, how you will identify, your answer is that you will look at the number of the placenta. Like you are going to see that two different placental masses, and it will be relative to the number of the fetuses, and attempted visualization of the dividing membrane for the 2 versus 4 layers of the fused amnion chorion, the thickness, okay, for the thickness of the membranes. In cases of dichorionic diamniotic, you will see that the membrane which is between the two babies, it is more than 2 millimeter. So it will tell you that this is dichorionic pregnancy generally. And the latter part of the first trimester, the base of the intertwin membrane, it should be inspected. It appears as the twin peak or lambda sign, which is triangular projection of the tissue extending beyond the chorionic placental surfaces, and it is indicative of dichorionic gestation. Which sign? Twin peak or lambda. Two placenta, they are most commonly noted. However, they may be fused, which may be difficult to identify in two separate entities. I will show you the picture in a while. In monochorionic diamniotic, what happens? The monochorionic pregnancies, they will have a right angle T sign at the base of the intertwin membranes. So actually you are going to see these signs where you are seeing extension of placenta into the membranes. Okay, so or you can say that this sign you are seeing where the fetal membranes, they are attached to the placenta, then you will see that they are just at the right angle, and they are just like the T, or they are just like the lambda. So and if they are thick, then you will say that this is lambda. If these are thin, then you will say T sign. So an intertwined membrane, it will be noted separating the fetuses. However, it will be noted to be very thin and like here, measuring less than 2 millimeter. At the first trimester, monochorionic diamniotic pregnancies, they can be mistaken for monoamniotic pregnancy, and a stuck sign appearance it can occur. But what is the end? That you should repeat ultrasound to see that these are like two different fetuses like that. In cases of monochorionic monoamniotic pregnancy, what happens? There will be no monochorionic monoamniotic. So you will see two fetuses and you will see that liquor is there, but you will not see any separating membrane. So basically, you are supposed to determine chorionicity at or before 14 weeks of gestation. And if you are in doubt, then the Green Top guideline from the UK says that you should send this woman to the fetal medicine. Why? Because they will just do the ultrasound, they are more experienced, then they will tell us. So in cases of conjoined twins, we will see two separate fetuses. They are noted in gestation sac with a single placenta and without an intertwined membrane, but with a connection at a particular body site. And then rejoined twins, they may be diagnosed. The most common points at which they are, then we know that they can be joined at head, they can be joined at lower abdomen and sacrum like that. So here I hope that you can tell me that which one is the T sign and which one is the lambda sign. So where do you see the T sign? Here or here?
This one T sign, the
This one?
B.
Yeah, this is T sign.
B.
Excellent. Yes, this is T sign. Okay, and now look at this one, how it would be apparent. Chorion, amnion, and this is the second amnion. Okay, so there is no in between these two lines membranes, there is no chorion, and the thickness is less than 2 millimeter. Now, what do we call this sign? Look at this one.
There is you know the name T sign and
lambda sign, right?
sign.
Lambda sign. So why it is thicker?
Lambda.
Even if you will compare here and here, because it has got a chorion and the amnion like that. The amnion is the inner one towards the liquor, and the chorion is in the middle like that. So this thickness is more than 2 millimeters. So we are talking about a dichorionic pregnancy. So that is the point. Okay. So do we get any lab findings? So no biochemical test. It is going to identify multifetal gestation, but the level of the human chorionic gonadotropin in the maternal plasma, they are higher in the twins as compared to the same time of pregnancy in the singleton pregnancies. So mother will have higher level of HCG. So higher level of HCG, you have to exclude twin pregnancy and you have to exclude molar pregnancy. These are two things. Okay. Then you are going to see high serum levels of the alpha fetoproteins. So they can be normal, but sometimes they can be high like that. Then mother is likely to have hypochromic microcytic anemia because the two children are there and the requirement will increase tremendously and the mother cannot compensate, so she is likely to have anemia. So these are just like the findings which are not very specific. What? Elevated HCG, elevated alpha fetoprotein, and maternal anemia. But as you can say that these are very non-specific because HCG can be increased in other conditions. Alpha fetoproteins can also increase in different conditions. Can you tell me about any condition where alpha fetoprotein is elevated? So alpha fetoprotein, you are going to see if there is open neural tube defect, open abdominal wall defect, then you are going to see it like that. Okay. So then another interesting area is that how do we screen the twins for abnormalities? Okay. So the neural tube defects, their incidence is going to be higher, like 2.5 times higher in this multiple pregnancy. So we need to check them at 14 to 20 weeks. So we will check the level of alpha fetoprotein. If the level is more than 4.5 times the median, then we have to do further testing. Look for alpha fetoprotein for neural tube defects. Then we need to do ultrasound because we need to see that what is the amniotic, is there any fluid collection into the head, into some other area. So we will have to take the amniotic fluid and we have to look for alpha fetoproteins and acetylcholine esterase measurement. So routine aneuploidy screening should be offered, and depending upon the maternal age. The mathematical likelihood of trisomy and the presence of the problems, it is going to increase. Like you should know that what type of defects are associated with increased maternal age. So your answer is aneuploidies, abnormal number of the chromosomes. And these aneuploidies, these can be like trisomies or these can be monosomies. Trisomies like trisomy 18, trisomy 21 and trisomy 15. Highest incidence of which trisomy? Trisomy 21 or the Down syndrome. That is one thing, okay? So in the twins, the problem occurs that we cannot just, since there are multiple babies, so you have to calculate the risk for each baby. So like you know that the maternal age, that will remain the same. Serum levels, they will also be the same. So you are going to rely on the nickel translucency. If the nickel translucency is more than 6 millimeters, then you will say that this baby is at an increased risk of having neural tube defect or Down syndrome now. So generally, like if the thickness is more than 3 millimeter, we say that the risk of the fetus has increased. But if the nuchal translucency is more than 6 millimeter, then you will say that this baby is at higher risk of developing Down syndrome. Is this point clear? So, and then the point is that if you are getting some abnormal screening test, you should refer this patient to the fetal medicine. Why? Because they are going to calculate the risk of this pregnancy, and then you should know that CVS, yes, CVS we can do up to from 11 to 13 plus 6 weeks, okay? And the one who is doing the CVS, he should be an expert, he should do it under ultrasound guidance, and he should not get this contaminated samples. Like he should be able to identify the twins clearly. Then, we cannot use like sometimes they're using different techniques. Like they are taking the cells, so they have taken the fluid, okay, and then what they will do, they will take this indigo carmine, okay, and they will inject it into the amniotic fluid, okay. So when you are injecting it into the amniotic fluid, it will give it a greenish color, right? So what will happen? You will know that from which twin you have taken the sample, so the mistake will not occur. But the point is that two consultants should do all of these procedures, and it should be done under ultrasound guidance. Then you should remember the main points about amniocentesis, that it should be done after 15 weeks. If we do it before 15 weeks, then it is called early amniocentesis, and that is associated with higher risk. Like the chance of miscarriage will increase by like 1% above the background risk. What is the background risk of miscarriage? Like 2%, 2 to 3% of all pregnancies. And now you have done amniocentesis, so the risk will increase to 3 or 4 in 1000. If you have done CVS, the CVS carries higher risk as compared to the amniocentesis, okay. So now the risk will increase to 2% above the background risk, so significant risk. So that's why these procedures, they should be done in the higher centers. So that is one thing, okay, higher center, and should be by some expert who is maintaining competency by doing like 30 procedures in 1 year. That is the prerequisite, okay. So if you have a mother, the patient, and on per abdomen, the fundal level is higher than the expected, so what should be the differential diagnosis? You need to see that what can be the differential diagnosis? There can be multifetal gestation, inaccurate dating, hydromnias, like polyhydramnias is there. Then hydatidiform mole with or without concurrent fetal gestation, like the partial mole or the complete mole. Then abdominal tumors like leiomyomas, then adnexal masses. These are the things. So what are the complications of twin pregnancy? All potential maternal complications of pregnancy are more common in multifetal gestation, as the maternal system, it undergoes greater stress with higher maternal fetal nutritional requirements. Women are more likely to be anemic, they can have UTIs, they can have velamentous cord insertion, vasa previa, or placenta previa, and they may experience vaginal hemorrhage before, during, and after delivery, and they may undergo cesarean section and experience postpartum depression. Why postpartum depression? Because they underwent a major surgery, and they experience greater rates of hyperemesis gravidarum due to elevated HCG, and women are more likely to be diagnosed with gestational diabetes mellitus due to a greater presence of pregnancy associated hormones like human placental lactogen. Because there are two placenta, it is coming from the placental cells, so the chance of having GDM, it will increase several times. Hypertensive disorders of pregnancy, they are more common and they occur in proportion to the total number of the fetuses present. So this leads to greater incidence of placental abruption and iatrogenic preterm delivery, because hypertension is a risk factor for placental abruption. So in the singleton pregnancies, if we have 100 patients with single babies, single pregnancies, the rate of hypertensive disorders is going to be 6.5%. Preeclampsia occurs more frequently in women with multiple babies, and with the twin gestation they have a 2.6-fold greater relative risk of developing preeclampsia. Like it is 6.5% in the singleton pregnancy, so it is going to be like 17 to 18% in cases of preeclampsia. So the risk has increased 2.6 folds. So then the fetal reduction, it will reduce the risk of hypertensive complications, and then the number of, it is also relative to the number of the living fetuses. So the more fetuses in the womb, the higher the chance that mother is going to develop PET. So on the other hand, the baby is also going to have different complications, like the average gestational age at delivery is 36 to 37 weeks in twins. Okay, it is 33 weeks in the triplets and 31 weeks in the quadruplets. But you must have seen in the practice that you are always treating preterm labor in the twins. This is the case, right? You will agree with me. We are always managing the preterm deliveries, and we will see that much higher incidence in the multiple pregnancy. It is so high that we think it is normal. All twins are going to have this preterm labor. But the incidence, like it is mostly if they are like dizygotic, diamniotic, they are going to deliver at 36 to 37. Okay, the twins. If there are triplets, the average age is they will deliver at 33 weeks. And if there are 4 babies, then they are going to deliver at 31 weeks. So the number one complication is going to be prematurity. Prematurity means any birth before 37 weeks of pregnancy. So the rates of mortality, morbidity are significantly higher in multifetal gestation, mainly due to preterm delivery, and they result from neonatal prematurity. These complications, like premature rupture of the membranes, it occurs 25% in the twin pregnancy, 50% in the triplet pregnancy, and 75% in the quadruplet pregnancies. Okay, twins have 6 times higher rate of preterm delivery, 5 times higher risk of stillbirth, and 7 times higher rate of neonatal death. So see, these numbers are very important. Why? Because they are increasing the morbidity so much. That is one thing. Okay, and then the other thing is that the twins, they are also going to be at risk of other insults like intracranial injury, intraventricular hemorrhage, then periventricular leukomalacia, and cerebral palsy. That is more common in the infants which are born from a multiple pregnancy as compared to the singleton pregnancy. Then the twin to twin transfusion syndrome, that is a complication of the monochorionic diamniotic gestation. It affects 15% of such pregnancies and occurs most commonly due to arteriovenous anastomosis. Just remember it, that which one is the most common? Arteriovenous. These are all SBs, they have asked in the exam before. Most commonly due to arteriovenous anastomosis, which leads to unequal fetal placental sharing and transfusion between twins. The donor twin is typically affected by hypovolemia and anemia, which may lead to hydrops and oligohydramnias. The recipient twin, it will have evidence of the polyhydramnias, hypervolemia, multi-organ enlargement, and frequent heart failure that may lead to death. Ultrasonography, it should be used every 2 weeks starting at 16 weeks in the monochorionic gestation to screen for the development of twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. Why it is so? Because the 96%, like 96% of the twin-to-twin transfusion syndromes, they will develop before 24 weeks of pregnancy. Okay, so every 2 weeks, or sometimes they will write in the question fortnightly. So fortnightly we are doing it, and then we are getting seeing them, and then we are using a classification system to see that they are developing or they are not developing. Okay, and then there are different stages, Quintero staging, where we are telling that what is the stage of the twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome and what are the chances of survival. So all of these things are very important. So 96%, 99% they will occur before 24 weeks of pregnancy, and just 1% will occur after 24 weeks of pregnancy. That's why we screen them between 16 to 24 weeks, every 2 weeks. Okay, and if you have found before 26 weeks of pregnancy, then you are going to develop them before, then you are going to do laser therapy, laser ablation. That is the treatment of the treatment of choice, and if we do, then it is associated with improved neurodevelopmental outcome. In cases of abnormal fetal growth, what happens? Discordant fetal growth, it occurs when there is a 20% or more difference in the estimated fetal weight as determined by the ultrasound between the fetuses. So when discordant size it occurs, and then the both fetuses they remain appropriate for the gestational age, then they are not at an increased risk of morbidity or mortality. For example, at 20 weeks, you expect that the both fetuses they will weigh like 500 grams. Okay, so both are showing like the weight. One is showing 500, the other one is showing 550 grams. So that is acceptable. Okay, don't worry about that. When the discordant size occurs, but the both fetuses they are not appropriate for their gestational age, or the one is not appropriate for the gestational age, then you have to worry. Like I will say, give the same example again. Like at 20 weeks, you expect that both fetuses they will weigh like 500 grams. Okay, but now one fetus is weighing 500 grams and the other one is weighing like 450 grams. Then you should be worrying about it. Okay, that is one thing. So if there is discrepancy in size by 20%, that is an indication for delivery like that. Okay. So in cases of selective growth restriction of a single fetus or of multiple fetuses, there is a significantly increased risk of neonatal morbidity and mortality when compared to the gestational age matched other singleton pregnancies. So in each stage, the chance and the complication for the multiple pregnancy they are going to increase. Fetal demise, the spontaneous, we did nothing. What happened? You visualized two twins, but then what happened? One was like one died. So the spontaneous reduction of a fetus known as vanishing twin, it may occur in 20 to 60% of the spontaneous twin pregnancies. Rate are higher with increasing maternal age, greater the number of the gestational sacs, and earlier detection of multifetal gestation via ultrasound. A vanishing twin, it may affect not only maternal serum analyte results, but also chorionic villus sampling and the karyotype results. So the fetus is disappearing, but still it will have its influence on the results. Very important for your exam, Quintero staging for the twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. It has 5 different stages. These stages should be on your fingertips. So the stage 1 is monochorionic or the diamniotic gestation with oligohydramnias and or polyhydramnias. Here the oligohydramnia means, can you give me the definition? What will be that? Maximum vertical pool less than 2 centimeter, that will obviously oligo. Okay, or it is more than 8 centimeter in the other twin. So more than 8, polyhydramnios. Less than 2, oligohydramnios. So one will have just 2 centimeter maximum vertical pool, and the second one will have more than 8 centimeter. In stage 2, donor twin, it will have its bladder will be absent. Here in the first stage, both bladders visible. Because what is happening, if you look at the pathology, what is happening, there are arteriovenous, arterial, or can be venous anastomosis between the two placenta. Okay, so one twin is pouring its blood and blood into the second twin, and one twin is losing. So the one who is getting extra supply is going to become large, and the one who is sending its supply and the blood to the other one, he will become small. Okay, that is, one twin is going to be anemic and the second one is going to be polycythemic. The first twin, the one who is donor will die because of the hyperdynamic circulation. Why hyperdynamic circulation? Because this poor chap is anemic, can't meet its nutritional requirements. And why the larger twin will die? Because the blood will be like very thick, polycythemic. Okay, so he can also die like that. So when the twin to twin transfusion syndrome occurs, associated with high mortality. Okay, so here in the stage 1, we are going to see either oligohydramnios or polyhydramnios, and the bladders will be visible. In stage 2, the donor twin with the absent bladder. In stage 3, there is going to be these changes plus abnormal Doppler findings. Now the Doppler, when they tell you that now the Doppler findings are abnormal, you will say that this is Quintero stage 3. If they tell you that one fetus is hydropic, then you will say this is stage 4. Because why one is hydropic? Because already anemic. In stage 4-5, there will be death of one twin or both twins. Okay, that's all you need to remember about the Quintero staging, and they are going to ask you the questions. So if there is like twin to twin syndrome, the fetal in the second and the third trimester, the fetal loss rates reaches, so twin to twin transfusion syndrome, higher chance of fetal loss. Now generally speaking, in second and third trimester, the fetal loss rates, it reaches 5% and 15% in the twin and the triplet pregnancy. In the twins, the fetal loss rate in third trimester is 5%. And in the triplets, it will increase to 15%. And it means like the loss of the one fetus, it will pose a greater risk for the demise of the remaining twin. So again, here the statistics are important. If one twin is dead, then the risk of death for the second twin, it will increase to 15%. Okay, the risk of death 15%. Second significant risk will be neurological damage. So how many fetuses they will have neurological damage? 23%. My reference is Green Top Guideline of the RCOG. Risk of death of the second twin or the surviving twin, okay, 15%. And the risk of neurological damage for the second twin, 23%, also SPA like that. Okay. So in a dichorionic diamniotic pregnancy, what happens? A single demise of a single twin is in a dichorionic pregnancy is less common as compared to the monochorionic pregnancies. In the event of a twin demise, the surviving co-twin is at minimal risk of subsequent morbidity due to housing in a separate sac, because he is living in a separate sac and if he has a separate placenta. Delivery is not recommended in the event of the demise of a co-twin. However, it may be considered in the early term period, because one fetus is dead, the second one, this is not indication that you should deliver the second one. So how we can manage, we will talk about that in a while. Okay. So in a monochorionic diamniotic pregnancy, what happens? Monochorionic diamniotic pregnancies, they are at a greater risk as compared to the dichorionic gestations, and the risk of neurological morbidity is greatest in the surviving twin as compared to the single pregnancy. It may reach like 20%, but the RCOG says 23%. Unfortunately, there is no benefit of immediate delivery of the surviving twin, so you have to wait. So the delivery should be recommended prior to 34 weeks, and due to the impact of the fetus death and the prematurity. So you need to cover, it should not be done prior to 34 weeks. Why? Because of one side, he is going to suffer the effects of preterm delivery as well as the effect of death of the second twin, okay, of the first twin. So don't deliver before 34 weeks. So at 34 weeks, we are going to give them corticosteroids for fetal lung maturity. And you will give magnesium sulfate here or no need if you are delivering at 34 weeks. So should we give magnesium sulfate to this patient or no need? We will not give, because
Yes.
magnesium sulfate is given from 28 to 30 weeks, okay? And if the consultant thinks that the baby is going to benefit, then he can say that we can give up to 32 weeks. So, but not beyond that one, okay? So, if they ask you, that this fetus is,
Yes.
what is the chance that this fetus is going to survive, that how you are going to deliver them, and what complication will occur to the fetus. So they can this woman will go for normal delivery, and the fetus will have, the greatest risk is that of developing cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is associated with preterm delivery. That is the point, okay? Sometimes there can be totally unusual outcomes, like the conjoined twins. This is very rare. Conjoined twins, they are a result of incomplete separation. In the early development, if the two zygotes, they will separate after day 13, then we are going to get the conjoined twins. So most commonly, the 30% of the conjoined twins, they are fused at the chest and the lower abdominal region, or they are called thoracoomphalophagous. Body side fusion, it may occur at any location. 3:1 female gender preference in conjoined twin pregnancies. So mostly females, 3:1. 3 females will be having this conjoined twins. Like in 3 pregnancies, you have conjoined twins and they are females. And 1 pregnancy where you will have conjoined male fetuses, okay? And then 50% of the conjoined twin pregnancies, they will result in IUFD. And majority of them who survive, they will have anomalies which will be not compatible with life. Rare cases of conjoined twins surviving in the adulthood, they persist, but then you know that they have to undergo several surgical procedures for surviving. That is important, okay? So very rare to see, like 1 in a million or more, you are going to see a case of living conjoined twins like that, okay? Like they have been separated later in the adult life, later in the fetal life, like in the infancy or in the first 2 years of life. So there is another complication, like we are always talking about twin to twin transfusion syndrome, but there are other situations like complications like twin reversed arterial perfusion. It is also known as acardic twin pregnancy. Occurs in 1% of the monochorionic gestations, and in this condition, one fetus lacks normal heart and the head development, and it is perfused by the placental anastomosis from the donor twin. This may occur as a part of the trap sequence in which a normal donor twin feeds the recipient twin. The donor or the pump twin develops high output cardiac failure, resulting in demise in 50% of the cases. So, what is the treatment of the twin pregnancy? Not treatment, I mean how you are going to manage them. There are certain antepartum managements, like if there are like very high order multiple twins, then we can go for fetal reduction. So fetal reduction is a process that may be considered in multifetal gestation with clearly separate chorionicity, like trichorionic, triamniotic pregnancies. Multifetal pregnancy reduction, it decreases the risks which are inherent to the multifetal gestation, such as hypertensive disorders and spontaneous preterm delivery. A Cochrane review found that the woman who reduced a triplet pregnancy to the twins They observed low rates of the loss, preterm birth, low birth weight infants, less chance of the operative delivery and neonatal death, and the maternal complications during the antenatal period. Obviously, like when you will decrease the number of fetuses, all of complications they will decrease. The fetuses to be reduced in selectives is selected based on the fetal health when the predetermined by the definitive invasive prenatal diagnosis. So you are going to assess that is this like the mother is having complication, she has been consented, she has been given enough information, and she is willing to go for reduction, and then you have facilities available to cause this fetal reduction. You should know about the chorionicity. Monochorionic gestations they complicate reduction procedures due to the potential morbid consequences of or to the surviving twin. It is recommended that both fetuses of a monochorionic pair they can be reduced when applicable. Selective reduction is specific, and basically it will go and reduce the abnormal fetus in a multifetal gestation. The risks are greater than in the multifetal reduction, largely due to the later gestational age of the diagnosis. It can be performed under ultrasound guidance with the intracardiac potassium chloride injection. In cases of the, sometimes they ask you in the exam that you have two fetuses like the twin pregnancy, and how you will date the pregnancy. One twin is large and one second twin is small. So whose size you will take to age or date the pregnancy? Even if you have to take the CRL, you will take for the larger baby or the smaller baby? What do you think?
What is the question, Doctor? Repeat again.
Yeah, I will repeat. You have a multiple pregnancy, right? One fetus is large, one is small. So
Okay.
So you want to measure the CRL because you want to date the pregnancy, that how many weeks this pregnancy. So which fetus you will use? The small one or
I
the
will
large one?
big one.
Big one.
Large one.
Excellent. Yes, you need to check the big one. Why? Because maybe the small baby is already IUGR having problem right from the start. The baby is diseased. Okay, so you have to take as a reference, you will measure the larger baby. That is the point. Okay, so preterm birth prediction and prevention. So we need to do the cervical length, serial cervical length assessment, fetal fibronectin screening, and uterine hormone monitoring. They all have been considered as methods to reduce the spontaneous preterm birth. No intervention has been proven to be effective for screening asymptomatic women with multifetal gestation, and they are not recommended. Although the positive predictive value of the fetal fibronectin test and a short cervical length is poor, they may be used for acute management of symptomatic women. Prophylactic cerclage has shown no benefits, and it has even shown to be harmful when placed in women with twin gestations and a short cervix. So it should be avoided. Currently, no high-quality data support the prophylactic breast replacement. However, current multi-centered randomized controls they are underway, but still we don't have any clear view. Progesterone treatment is not recommended for use with intent to reduce spontaneous preterm birth in an asymptomatic woman with multifetal gestation. It has even resulted in higher rates of early loss in higher order gestations, although data to recommend progesterone in women with a twin gestation and the short cervical length like a less than 25 millimeter, they are insufficient. And the use of either a 17-hydroxyprogesterone caproate or vaginal progestogen capsules, it has not shown to prolong pregnancy. There is no role for prophylactic tocolysis in the multifetal gestation, and the calcium channel blockers like the nifadipine or the NSAIDs, they may be used for short-term pregnancy prolongation during corticosteroid administration, and they allow transfer to a tertiary care center. Like you want to do this in utero transfer, yes, you can give. Maternal complications of pulmonary edema is more profound in multifetal pregnancy with use of tocolytics. primarily extracted from benefits seen in the singleton pregnancy, but we don't know that it is recommended to administer antenatal corticosteroids like Dexa or the betamethasone to women with multifetal gestation between 23 weeks and 34 weeks who are at risk of delivery within 1 week. A single repeat course, it may be considered if a woman remains at risk of preterm delivery at least 1 week from the completion of the prior course before 34 weeks of gestation. So you have given the antenatal corticosteroids at 26 weeks and the patient has come to you in the 27th week, don't repeat. But if the same patient comes to you after 28 weeks, so more than 1 week has passed from the previous administration of injection, so now you can give her another course if the consultant approves. Okay, that is what the guideline says. Administration of magnesium sulfate prior to preterm delivery at less than 32 weeks, it has been shown to decrease the severity of the cerebral palsy and the risk of cerebral palsy in the surviving twin, regardless of the number. So at less than 32 weeks, the patient has come to you, you are going to give them magnesium sulfate. You will give in the same manner as you will give magnesium sulfate in the treatment of the PET. You need to give 4-gram loading dose for over a period of 10 minutes, then it is followed by 1 to 2 grams per hour for 24 hours. Same complications, same precautions to measure the magnesium sulfate level. The next part is that how do we assess the fetal well-being? So in dichorionic diamniotic, the ultrasonography is essential to monitor fetal growth throughout singleton, and the scans they should be performed every 4 to 6 weeks in otherwise uncomplicated pregnancies. More frequent monitoring is required for pregnancies which are complicated by growth restriction. Monochorionic diamniotic, so the monochorionic presentation, it requires more frequent ultrasonography in order to monitor closely for the development of the twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. Ultrasound, it should be performed every 2 weeks to monitor for the changes in the amniotic fluid index in both sex and to monitor the fetal growth. Antepartum testing via external like electronic fetal monitoring, it is not routinely recommended in uncomplicated pregnancies and normally the grown pregnancies. This is rare. In the most women, they will undergo weekly testing in the late third trimester for gestations complicated by the growth restriction or the discordance between the twins. So if there is like a reduced there is you are suspecting IUGR or there is like more than 20% difference in the size of the two twins, or if there is more than 20% difference in the size, you should deliver the fetuses. But if the discrepancy in the size is less than 20%, then you are going to offer them weekly monitoring. Bed rest is not recommended due to lack of benefit and the increased risk of the thrombosis and the other deconditioning, even during the prolonged admission. So she has to walk. Intrapartum, so the cesarean you will do only for obstetric complications. The care should be in the consultant-led unit. In the intrapartum interventions, like when she is into labor, what should be done? You know, the most important area is when are you going to deliver them. In cases of dichorionic diamniotic, the timing of delivery is balanced between the risks of prematurity and the rising perinatal mortality rates after 38 weeks in the dichorionic twin gestations. Therefore, dichorionic diamniotic twin gestation, it should be delivered at 38 weeks. You will counsel the patient at 37 weeks and you will deliver this di patient at 38 weeks. The second type of pregnancy, it can be monochorionic diamniotic. So monochorionic diamniotic gestation, it should be delivered between 34 and 38 weeks with timing depending upon the given gestation's associated complications or the maternal morbidity. For example, a gestation which is complicated by twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, it may be considered for delivery at 34 weeks. While a gestation that has two normally grown fetuses and there is no complication, then you can wait until 38 weeks. So we cannot say that all patients should be delivered at a certain age, because we need to see that what is the overall appearance of the pregnancy. how the baby is growing. Is there any complication? There is complication, deliver at 34 weeks. No complications, things are fine, then you can go even to 38 weeks. In cases of monochorionic monoamniotic pregnancies, the management of the monochorionic monoamniotic gestation, it remains controversial. Most commonly, patients are admitted at 24 to 28 weeks for daily fetal surveillance, serial growth assessment, and delivery between 32 and 34 weeks via cesarean section. Mode of delivery. So the first important thing was time of delivery. Second important issue is mode of delivery. Multifetal gestation is not itself an indication for cesarean delivery. A history of previous low transverse cesarean section is not a contraindication for twin vaginal delivery. However, fetal malpresentation is 10 times more common in multiple gestations. 50% of twins, they will both be cephalic at time of birth. In 33% of the cases, twin A will present cephalic and twin B will present breech. Both fetuses, they will be breech in 10% of cases, and just less than 10% they will be dually transverse, like where the both babies are lying transversely like that. Okay, so most of the babies, they will be cephalic, and then one will be cephalic, one breech, then both will be breech in just 10%, and the transverse lie very rare, like less than 10%. Delivery should be performed in the operating suite due to potential need for emergency cesarean section because if some complication occurs. So the regional anesthesia is recommended, and pediatrician should be in attendance at the birth. Vaginal delivery, it may be attempted when both twins are cephalic and when twin A is cephalic but twin B is not. So both external cephalic version and the internal podalic version of the twin B, they may be considered by the experienced provider. There is no definitive recommended time interval between the infant delivery as long as they are in the in utero twin. It shows reassuring testing with fetal monitoring. When twin A is breech and twin B is cephalic, they are at risk of becoming locked twins. So their head, they become impacted against one another and impacted in the pelvis. This is an obstetrical emergency and it may require cesarean delivery of both twins. Basically, in practice, if you will go, the Green Top guideline says the guideline on the NICE guideline on the intrapartum care says that the inter-delivery distance time gap should not be more than 30 minutes. Why it is so? Because the risk of PPH will increase, because otherwise also these women are at very high risk of having postpartum hemorrhage. Why? Because of the atonic uterus. That is the point. Okay, so better to deliver them within 30 minutes. Then you have the option to do external cephalic version as well as internal podalic version. So the consultant should be involved. Okay, IV line should be set up from the start. They have to deliver in an obstetric unit where the consultant is also available. Okay, so what is the prognosis of the twin pregnancy? Maternal and fetal complications, they are more frequent in multifetal gestation, although infants of the multifetal pregnancies, they have an increased risk of neurologic sequelae. The most important prognostic factor for developmental outcome is gestational age at delivery. Although the women are at an increased risk of hypertensive crisis, then uterine atony, hemorrhage and hysterectomy, the maternal mortality rate for the women with a multifetal gestation is only slightly above the rates for the singleton pregnancy. That is one thing. So again, like if they ask you that how you will screen the babies for for the anemia, like in cases of twin to twin transfusion syndrome, so your answer will be middle cerebral artery peak systolic velocity. You know that it will increase in cases of twin delivery like that. Okay, so timing and mode of delivery, that we should deliver them from 36 weeks. We can like if things are going well, that we should discuss at 36 weeks, and we will not do cesarean section unless there is obstetric indication. Then in the labor, we have to offer continuous fetal monitoring. That is important, okay? If you have monochorionic monoamniotic twins, they are at very high risk of fetal death. Monochorionic monoamniotic. So 32 to 34 weeks is the ideal time, okay? If the things are fine, then you can go to 35 weeks. Otherwise, just try to deliver between 32 to 34 weeks. Then in cases of monochorionic and the diamniotic pregnancy, then you are going to discuss with them that what complications can occur, and then you should in all of these twins you are going to discuss the mode of delivery at 36 weeks, and the monochorionic and the diamniotic you are going to deliver at 37 weeks, and if there are like dichorionic diamniotic, you can deliver them at 38 weeks. So these are important for you. Rest of the things like they are not important. This is just the fetal surveillance, like you are going to see them every 2 weeks, because in all of these you are doing the same thing. What are you doing? You are just checking the estimated fetal weight, deep vertical pool, deepest vertical pool, and then the umbilical artery Doppler. Not more than that. So anytime the reverse, like I said before, anytime the there is abnormality in the Doppler, that is an indication for delivery. So the smaller baby, you are going to give them antenatal corticosteroids and deliver. That's all you need to do. And then write down everything in the notes, because the twins, they are going to have more and more complications. So more complications means that we are going to have higher chance of complaints. That's why it is important, okay?